Have you ever wondered what really happens when a woman realizes you've lost interest? It's not just about a few signs or subtle hints. It's a deeper emotional shift that can completely alter the dynamic between you two. When she senses your attention fading, her reaction will be far more intense and revealing than you might expect. It's a moment that can either pull her closer or push her further away. But most importantly, it unveils her true feelings about you and the connection you share. The way she responds will not only tell you where you stand, but it can also give you an unexpected advantage in the relationship. Understanding this shift is crucial because it could unlock a level of power you never knew you had. Stick around, because mastering this moment could completely transform how you approach attraction and connection in your relationships. 1. The initial shock of losing control. When a woman realizes you've lost interest, the shock is far deeper than a simple surprise. It's an emotional jolt that shakes her to her core. This isn't just a sudden realization. It's the moment she recognizes that the dynamic she once controlled has completely unraveled. Up until that point, she may have felt secure in the belief that you were emotionally available, predictable, and invested in the relationship. But when that attention vanishes, it creates an emotional turbulence that she can't just brush aside. Certainty is her anchor in relationships. It tells her that she's valued, that you're present and engaged. The loss of that certainty disrupts her sense of stability and forces her into a state of confusion and vulnerability. Now she's left with the nagging question: what went wrong? Was I wrong about him? Did I overlook something? These aren't just random doubts. They stem from the fear of losing something she thought was solid. It's this sense of power slipping away that sends her spiraling into self-reflection. Here's the key. This shock isn't just a sign of weakness. It's the moment when the scales begin to tip. Your sudden emotional distance creates an aura of mystery around you. She no longer knows where she stands, and that uncertainty grips her in a way that nothing else can. Her mind fixates on the question, why? That simple, unresolved question can take over her thoughts. The best thing you can do now is let her wrestle with that uncertainty. Don't try to smooth things over or explain yourself. Let her experience that discomfort. It's in this state of confusion that she will start questioning her own behavior, re-evaluating not just you, but her entire approach to the relationship. The power she once thought she held begins to slip away, and that's when the dynamic really starts to shift. Second, her need to reclaim validation. Validation is like a lifeline in relationships. When she senses your attention slipping away, it creates a void that her mind can't simply overlook. This void doesn't just leave her feeling unsure, it ignites a primal need to reclaim her place of importance in your life. But at its core, this isn't just about seeking reassurance or comfort. It's about regaining control over the emotional space you once shared and asserting her power in the relationship. During this phase, you'll begin to notice subtle shifts in her behavior. She may start reaching out more frequently, but the messages will seem casual at first. Something like, "Hey, how have you been?" Or, "I saw something that reminded me of you." On the surface, they seem innocent enough, but in reality, they're clever tests. She's trying to gauge whether you'll engage, how much interest you still have, and if she still holds any emotional weight in your life. These messages aren't random. They're calculated moves to see if you're still invested. If she doesn't get the reaction she was hoping for, don't be surprised if her actions escalate. She might drop hints about other men, casually mention how busy she is, or even act as though she's unaffected by your emotional withdrawal. But here's the thing, this is not true indifference. It's a calculated strategy to provoke you, to test your emotional stability, and to see how much control she can regain. It's her way of saying, how far can I push before I get a reaction? The biggest mistake many men make in this situation is misinterpreting her attempts at regaining validation as a genuine effort to reconnect. They think it means she's still emotionally invested, and so they fall into the trap of chasing her, over-explaining themselves, or jumping back into the same patterns they had before. But the real power in this moment is in maintaining your composure. By remaining emotionally detached and not immediately responding to her subtle tests, you create a sense of mystery and make her work harder for your attention. This shift in behavior, though subtle, causes her to reassess everything. She starts to see you in a new light. The man she thought she had all figured out now feels unpredictable and emotionally independent. This is when the true power dynamic starts to change. She begins to realize that she doesn't have the same control over you anymore, and that realization can be both unsettling and intensely intriguing for her. 3. The intrigue that forces her to reassess. Once the initial shock fades and her attempts to reclaim validation fall short, something powerful takes hold: intrigue. But this intrigue isn't just about you. It's about the mystery surrounding what went wrong and what caused the shift in your behavior. Women are naturally wired to analyze, especially when it comes to relationships. When your behavior changes unexpectedly, it sparks an intense need to understand why. She can't help but start replaying every interaction, looking for clues that could explain what happened. Did she miss something? Was there a sign she didn't pick up on? These aren't fleeting thoughts. They become a cycle, a loop she can't shake, constantly rethinking your past moments together. She might even start seeking advice from friends, trying to create a narrative that makes sense of your sudden emotional distance. But intrigue doesn't just keep her focused on you, it drives her into a place of self-reflection. As she digs deeper into your past interactions, she begins to notice things she overlooked before, qualities you possess, efforts you made, and unique aspects of your personality that stood out. The void left by your absence makes these positive traits stand out more in her mind. It's as if your silence has intensified everything she took for granted, making her realize just how much she had and now what she's potentially losing. The beauty of this stage is that you don't have to do anything. She's doing all the work herself. The more intrigued she becomes, the more she's invested in figuring out what happened. The deeper she delves, the more likely she is to realize just how much she could lose if this distance continues. The intrigue forces her to reassess her feelings, making her reevaluate not only your place in her life, but also how she views the relationship as a whole. The more she reflects, the more control and power you regain without lifting a finger. 4. The role of her ego in the shift. Her ego is a formidable force, one that plays a major role when she realizes you've pulled back. It's closely tied to her sense of identity and control, and when that control is threatened, her ego will go into full defense mode. The moment she understands that your interest has waned, it forces her to face an uncomfortable truth about herself, a version of herself she may not want to confront. The ego feeds off validation and certainty. When you're attentive, responsive, and emotionally present, it reaffirms her sense of importance in your world. But as soon as that attention disappears, so does the validation, leaving her in a state of emotional conflict. She begins to question her ability to influence you, her hold over the dynamic you once shared. This phase can be incredibly unsettling for her because it challenges everything she thought she knew about the relationship. If she once felt she had the upper hand, your withdrawal forces her to reckon with the fact that she might have lost that control. The result? Her ego will likely push her to act out in an attempt to regain what she feels is slipping away. She might make indirect comments, drop hints designed to provoke jealousy, or even put on a facade of confidence to cover up the insecurity that's bubbling beneath the surface. But here's the real key. Your steady, composed response is more unsettling to her than any reaction you could offer. When you don't fall into her ego-driven traps, it forces her to sit with her own discomfort. Your calm detachment, your emotional distance, will disrupt her sense of certainty and create a deep sense of unease. This shift, while subtle, is incredibly powerful. Over time, her ego will begin to give way to a deeper emotional reckoning. The more she reflects on her actions and your lack of response, the more likely she is to see things clearly, not through the lens of ego, but through genuine self-reflection. This is when the true introspection begins, and it's in that space that her feelings and understanding of the relationship will start to evolve. 5. The turning point when she feels the void. Silence is often a quiet yet powerful force. Its effects are subtle at first, but become undeniable when she truly feels the void you've left behind. This isn't just about missing your presence, it's about the absence of everything you contributed to the relationship. Your attention, your energy, your consistency. At first, she might brush off the shift, convincing herself that she can adapt to this new dynamic. But as time passes, whether days or weeks, the weight of your absence begins to settle in. She starts to realize how much she took for granted, the way you made her smile, how you truly listened, or even the sense of stability you brought to her life. Each realization comes in waves, and each wave feels stronger than the last. The void she's experiencing isn't just emotional, it's psychological as well. She begins to wonder if she underestimated your importance in her life. The longer you remain distant, the more she starts questioning herself. Did I do something wrong? Was I not enough? These questions will haunt her, making her reflect on the relationship and her role in it. For the first time, she might truly consider that losing your interest isn't just about you pulling away. It might be a result of something she failed to recognize or appreciate in the past. This phase is powerful because it forces her to confront her own behavior and its impact. It's a moment of reckoning for her, and your role during this time is incredibly simple. Do nothing. Don't try to explain, don't rush to fill the silence, and don't seek to re-engage. Let her sit with the absence. Let her process the void and allow her to reflect on what's truly missing. The longer she's left to her own thoughts, the more your absence amplifies, and the more significant it becomes in her mind. The void will grow larger and more powerful, and eventually it will force her to confront what she stands to lose. 6. Why silence amplifies your value. Silence is often misinterpreted, but it's one of the most powerful tools you can use in a relationship. It's not about ignoring her or playing mind games. It's about creating space for her to reflect on the value you brought to her life. When you go silent, you're not just pulling away. You're removing the constant reassurance she may have come to rely on. This absence forces her to reconsider your role in her world, and that's where the true power of silence lies. It's unexpected. It's different. Most men, when faced with disappointment or frustration, tend to over-explain themselves, seek closure, or try to regain attention. But by stepping back and remaining silent, you send a message that doesn't need words. I don't need to prove my worth to you. My actions and presence speak louder than any explanation ever could. This absence doesn't just make her wonder about you, it shifts her entire perspective. As time goes on, the silence doesn't leave a void. It amplifies your presence in her mind. She'll start replaying past moments, reflecting on the things she may have overlooked. Perhaps it's your patience, your consistency, or the way you made her feel seen and important. These qualities become much clearer in your absence. Without the distractions of constant contact, your positive traits are magnified and stand out in her mind like never before. But it doesn't stop there. Silence also forces her to question herself. Why hasn't he reached out? Is he really moving on? Was I blind to what I had with him? These questions won't just linger in her mind. They'll create a sense of urgency. As the silence stretches on, the more significant your absence becomes, and the more she realizes the depth of what she's lost. Her reflection on what you brought to the table and the space you've left behind will drive her to a place where she understands your true value, not just as a partner, but as someone who made her feel something she can't quite replicate elsewhere. 7. The emotional tension intensifies. As your silence continues, it starts to create a powerful, almost tangible emotional tension. This tension isn't just about her missing you. It's about the unresolved emotions and unanswered questions that begin to consume her. The uncertainty of where you stand in her life creates a mental fog that's hard to escape and keeps you firmly in her thoughts, even when she'd prefer to let go. This tension is so effective because it disrupts the emotional balance she once had. She might have thought she was in control, that the relationship's flow was predictable and stable, but your withdrawal completely shatters that belief. Losing that sense of control throws her into a whirlwind of emotions. Regret for not fully appreciating you, annoying curiosity about what you're doing without her, and even guilt for possibly taking your presence for granted. The tension she feels heightens her sensitivity to anything that reminds her of you, whether it's a song on the radio, a place you used to visit together, or even a casual mention of you in a conversation. These reminders start to pull her back into the emotional space you once occupied. Every time one of these triggers pops up, it deepens the emotional grip you have on her, forcing her to realize how much you truly meant to her. This phase is essential because it lays the groundwork for her to take action. The tension builds slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, until it becomes undeniable. The emotional pull becomes so strong that she will soon feel compelled to reach out, not just to satisfy her curiosity, but to resolve the mounting emotional unrest she's been carrying. Your role during this time is to stay grounded and patient. Resist the temptation to break the silence or explain yourself. The longer the tension holds, the more profound the impact will be when she finally reaches out. When that moment comes, she won't just be seeking answers. She'll be seeking closure on an emotional journey that has forced her to confront the depth of her feelings for you. 8. From curiosity to confrontation. Curiosity has a way of evolving into action, especially when the emotional tension reaches its peak. Once the weight of your absence becomes too much for her to ignore, she'll feel an undeniable urge to close the distance between you. At first, her attempts to reconnect might be subtle, liking your posts, sending a simple text, or casually trying to start a conversation. But as her curiosity builds, these actions will become more direct and intentional. When she finally reaches out, it's a clear sign that you've been on her mind non-stop. She's likely spent a lot of time replaying past moments and questioning what went wrong. This phase of reflection often brings her to a powerful realization. Losing you might have been a bigger mistake than she initially understood. The absence of your presence forces her to see things differently, and now she's ready to take action in an attempt to fix it. Your response during this pivotal moment is crucial. This is your opportunity to show her that you've grown, evolved, and no longer need to chase after her. Keep your responses calm, confident, and slightly detached. If she reaches out via text, don't jump into a deep conversation immediately. Instead, keep it light and relaxed, signaling that while you're open to reconnecting, you're no longer emotionally dependent on her. This balance of confidence and emotional distance makes her see you in a new light, as someone who is no longer easy to sway or control. Your composed demeanor shifts the power dynamic, making her realize that getting you back won't be as simple as she hoped. Now the tables are turned, and she's left understanding that winning your attention again requires much more than a few attempts. 9. Why mastering your emotions always wins. Mastering your emotions is one of the most powerful and attractive qualities you can display, especially when she tries to re-enter your life. When she reaches out, she may attempt to test your patience or provoke a response to gauge your level of emotional investment. How you handle these situations will dictate how she views you moving forward. Picture this. She brings up past arguments or casually mentions other men to provoke a reaction. If you respond with frustration or anger, it will show her that you're still emotionally hooked on her and her actions. But if you remain calm, composed, and unaffected, you send a clear message of strength and self-assurance. You're letting her know that while you care, you're no longer controlled by her moves or manipulations. Mastering your emotions isn't about ignoring or suppressing your feelings. It's about demonstrating that you can manage them with grace and maturity. It's about showing that you can face disappointment, rejection, or conflict without losing your balance. This emotional stability is rare and incredibly attractive because it builds a sense of security. She'll realize that no matter what she does, you won't be easily rattled. The beauty of emotional control is that it shifts the power dynamic in your favor. Instead of chasing after her or reacting to her attempts to stir things up, you show her that your happiness and peace of mind don't rely on her approval or attention. This emotional independence makes you stand out and leaves a lasting impression that's impossible to ignore. In the end, her emotional triggers become less effective, and she can't help but respect the strength and composure you bring to the table. 10. The strength of moving on with elegance. One of the most impactful and empowering things you can do is move on with elegance. And no, this doesn't mean completely cutting her off or pretending you don't care. It's about demonstrating that you are confident enough in yourself to prioritize your own happiness and growth. When you move on with grace, you send a strong message. I value myself too much to stay in a situation that no longer meets my needs or aligns with my personal standards. This level of self-respect is not only incredibly attractive, but it also communicates that you're not afraid to walk away from anything or anyone that doesn't contribute positively to your life. It forces her to reevaluate her own behavior and decisions. You see, graceful detachment isn't about playing games or trying to get back at her. It's about focusing on what makes you happy and fulfilled. It's about investing your time and energy into things that drive your personal growth. Whether that's advancing in your career, diving into new passions, or building a stronger sense of self. When she sees you thriving without her, it sends a powerful signal. It creates a sense of intrigue and admiration. She'll start to realize that you aren't emotionally dependent on her, and that your life is moving forward with or without her. The lasting impression you leave by moving on with elegance is one of maturity, dignity, and self-worth. Over time, this realization will sink in, and she'll begin to understand what she lost. As this understanding grows, regret often follows, along with a strong desire to reconnect. However, by the time this happens, you'll be in a place of strength, not desperation. You'll have the clarity to decide whether she truly deserves a second chance, or if your energy and time are better spent elsewhere. The power in gracefully moving on is that it allows you to take control of your own narrative and put yourself first, something that will ultimately lead to greater opportunities, stronger relationships, and deeper personal fulfillment. If this video struck a chord with you, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your perspective in the comments below. See you in the next one.